did promise a post-it, and talking about questions. One of the most underrated and underused question in change work is, what do we need to preserve? We run around asking people, so what do we need to change? What is changing? What did you change? But we almost never intentionally ask, what do we need to preserve? That is such an important part of change work, because you mentioned stability. We humans, we crave stability. Yeah. If we look at our history, most of the humankind change interventions was to preserve something as a survival mechanism. Yeah. And there's a book I talk about often. It's called The Leopard, and it's written by an Italian guy, Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa. And it talks about the Sicilian aristocracy after the Italian War of Independence, after the Italian Risorgimento. And the book basically boils down to the fact that in order for things to stay the same, everything needs to change. And what that means is for the Sicilian aristocracy to be able to preserve their lifestyle, their political capital, they had to rethink their entire system of connection, of networking, of resettling and redefining their dynamics. And I use this in one of my projects with working with a private bank. In order for that bank to preserve their market share, to preserve their way of life, their quality of work and life, they needed to change from engaging with representatives of generational wealth who are only mortals like us, and understand that they will need to work with 26, 27-year-old unicorns who do their private banking through mobile apps while waiting for the ski lift. So in order for things to stay the same, everything needs to change. And that is one very powerful question in change work. What do we need to preserve? And in order to preserve that, what do we need to change? And I would encourage everyone and anyone thinking about doing change or thinking about doing change work and actually doing these things. Don't look at resistance to change as something that you absolutely must convert at all costs. Sometimes that is there to protect something. Understand what that is. Is it a process? Is it a certain team dynamic? What is it that change resistance is trying to protect? It might be something that is worth protecting.
Now, I think it also links up to the kind of nudges that we can do to suggest, rather than more on the show rather than tell. And I saw a really brilliant example of that. Typically when we go into airports, I saw this at Austin Airport. Typically when we go into airports, we have all the signs for where you go for your luggage and check-in and everything else. And there are signs for toilets. Typically, you would have the board for the men's toilets. Then you would have a board for the female toilets where you go in, each of you. And typically, along with the female toilet sign, you'd also have a baby changing station sign. And so you would find, obviously, a lot of mothers going in there and things like that. Now, without going to all the other kind of signs that could possibly be there in other airports, in Austin Airport, what they had done was there was this mother female toilet sign with the baby changing station, and there was a male toilet sign with the baby changing station. And that's that subtle nudge which is there, instead of saying that, parents, it's a parental responsibility. It's not just the responsibility of the mother. So maybe there's a single dad who's going in and who's traveling with a child and who will need to do this. And really removing stereotyping in a very subtle way, putting that nudge in. So bringing that change, but bringing it through a nudge and preserving actually the family unit for what it is and whatever it could be. And I think that kind of nudging for change and this is happening at a national level, say. It could happen at a home level. It could happen at an organizational level, a company level, a team level, big and small again. So building in, what are some of the thoughts regarding, I know it's a huge topic. I do want to stay focused on our, what are some things that are coming up to your mind about these nudges?
Oh, this conversation alone can be a series of chats, but one of the most powerful nudges I have ever come across are behaviors. And that is, behavior is the visible part of our belief and our beliefs and our values and what we stand for. And behavior is contagious, both positive and negative. Hence, so much highlight put on leadership role modeling or any kind of role modeling. The thing that comes to mind, and we touched on, and we promised people that we would pick up back on productivity, and it's so fascinating. I've recently put together a content for a workshop around the principles of Kaizen, which is the Japanese productivity philosophy, which basically stands for Kai, that is change, and Zen, which is good. So it's basically changing for the better. And that really triggered an amazing conversation around productivity as a business philosophy and not just as a cost management, cost control tool. And, when you put the Kaizen principles up on the board, all of them speak about leadership behaviors that showcase a way of being in a business, not just doing a business. So it's about staying open to new ideas. It's about improving your self-awareness. It's about nurturing meaningful connections. It's about no blame, no excuses. Yeah. There is one principle around working effectively, but everything else is about how we show up in our work, not just how we go about doing our work. So back to your initial question, behaviors are the best nudges, whether in organizations or in life. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, we could tease out so many things from this. I just want to, linger on one of the things which is very essential for this conversation itself is about organizations orienting towards meaningful conversations as a way to bring about change. So one of the things that I'm working on, and one of the spaces that I work on, is on the diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging space. And recently I had a conversation with somebody on how do we engage and retain women at the workplace. And it's a wide conversation again, but the reason I bring that in is what we are looking to do now is to take that conversation to organizations, open that as a platform for discussion and facilitating a conversation within that organization. So it's not going in with saying, oh, what's wrong with you, or what are you trying to do, and what is your diversity ratio, what is this and what is that. It's not going on with a list of know-it-all or whatever, but really looking at sharing experiences and teasing out ideas, so there can be organic conversation coming in from the room, and then they look at formulating what will work for them internally, not going in as that, really literally as that know-it-all who which is typically what a lot of consulting work is associated with, but not going with that, but to tease conversations, to facilitate conversation, to tease out ideas. And sometimes the magic happens when you really provide that space for conversation. Not a lot of people are heard in organizations. Some of the ideas are not acted on. So how can you really create organizational spaces as conversation boxes where they can go and think inside, outside the box? The box is just a word in this case. But really looking at conversational zones, if you want to call it a zone or whatever word you want to use it. Not with the thing of, oh, we are fixing this, but going in with listening, making notes, and seeing how things can progress. So, I mean, I want to look at change, and I want to look at storytelling for change as a way to really create those conversational spaces. And as we sort of get towards wrapping up this conversation, this is what I want to leave our audience with. What are some of the, a line, couple of lines, paragraph that you want to leave our audience with?
Before I go and answer your question, just a short side story around box. There's that famous quote, don't think inside the box, don't think outside the box, think like there is no box. And I always thought that this is such a wonderful saying until I had a piece of work with people from packaging industry, and they're like, what do you mean there is no box? So there it flew out the window.
Change the metaphor for the industry.
Yeah, but back to your question, and my inner rebel, now that caffeine has been uploaded into the system, wants to come out and play. And I would just like to put a little spin to my answer. I think that the first prerequisite for having conversation spaces is to really make sure that any insights coming out of those conversations is accepted and heard and respected. And I will give you, the first example that comes to mind. I've been having a very tense, which is slightly more elegant than conflicted, relationship with the International Women's Day. Because I don't want to, adventure putting out percentages there. I'm terrible at math, but a huge majority of the conversations are around celebrating women who are senior something, and mothers, and wives, and friends, and daughters, and incredible cooks, and at least triathletes. And the conversation feels terribly lopsided. So I've been, trying to lead my own small side crusade. And before we talk about gender equity, let's also talk about equity within the gender. And at one point a while back, I was listening to a conversation, and a question came up, like, in order to create a safe environment, what are some of the safe topics to discuss about with women, especially in male-dominated industries? And someone said, children. You can always talk about children with women. And deep breaths, counting deep breaths, because first and foremost, you never know what woman sits in front of you and just had her third miscarriage, or lost their child, or cannot have children of their own, or maybe their neighbors just got twins and it's the third night in the row when they couldn't sleep. So the last thing they want to talk about is children. So I think the first prerequisite for having conversation spaces is to understand that in those conversations, you have a potentially infinite mix of equally valid, equally legit, equally to be celebrated journeys, experiences, life preferences, personal stands on some topics. So self-awareness and bias. Yeah, at least know what you're bringing into that conversation and what you're putting on the table. And that will help you with having, I speak about curiosity, courage, and compassion. That starts with self-curiosity, self-courage, and self-compassion. Yeah, whether it's a digital transformation, whether it's planning a vacation with your in-laws, or whether it's putting up, and outlining a panel for International Women's Day.
With you totally on that. And especially on really trying to, empathy is often used and misused. Sometimes I feel for myself, I can't always walk on somebody's shoes, in somebody's shoes, because I haven't even visualized what their reality is. So that's where the curiosity and the connection comes in. And that's so true for change work, to go in with that curiosity, to go in with trying to understand where they're coming from, and to our earlier discussion on why is there resistance to change. A lot of the times I always feel that when you say that as an organization, I want to be the most digitally transformed, the first, the best, and all that, that may not be as an employee in the organization, that may not be my whole goal. I want to know how it's affecting my life. Today I'm doing XYZ work. It's happening in XYZ way. I'm able to produce ABC output outcome. How is that going to change my life? And which is really coming down to the individual and seeing how their life is transforming and painting that picture and using that as a change narrative, rather than saying that we will be the world #1 digitally transformed company. Yeah. So what's in it for me, literally, and that kind of thing. And that's where I think the storytelling piece again can come in to help guide those conversations, to make it personal for everybody, to bring those specific visual moments to life of how a transformation is going to happen.
This is the moment when I would like to give a lot of credit to someone who very recently said that it's a lot about story listening, not just storytelling. So please take the credit.
Thank you.
It is an organizational decision to embark on a change of any kind. But it comes down to an individual decision to join it and support it. And what makes that change meaningful for the individuals is part of the story listening. Yeah. And this goes back to what we just touched on, to the equity within a slice of the organizational humanity. Yeah, whether we slice it based on a function, whether we slice it based on some other pocket of organizational structure. Some people slice it based on gender, some people slice it based on generations, and I will go by no comment around those. So really understand that the change is an organizational decision that is embraced, supported, fought against at an individual level. So story listening, very important. And, equity within whatever categories you use to make sense of your stakeholder. So yeah.
Those are fantastic lines to wrap up this conversation with. Like we said, we can go on for hours talking about what our experience is, what we feel about it, how we think change is driving us. So let's hopefully do another series later. And in the meantime, thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thanks for taking the time to join me instead of me having a monologue with myself on change. That would be a change.
And on this note, just to call out that 2 monologues do not make a dialogue. That's something we need to keep in mind.
Yeah. Lovely chatting, Minola. Let's catch up another time again. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this conversation, and look forward to hearing your comments and your change experiences as we share this.
Thank you. Thank you, Soundari. Bye.